Nickelodeon!
I guess we should be getting this one out of the way, huh? Susie and Angelica's Preschool Daze was the second spin-off of the hit classic Rugrats. And considering I wasn't a big fan of their first spin-off, you know, the one that some people actually like, All Grown Up, you can imagine what I feel about this one, which almost nobody even remembers, let alone likes. Susie and Angelica's Preschool Daze came out in 2005, and if you weren't there, Rugrats in 2005 was kind of where Fairly Odd Parents is now. It was on top of the world, you know, a long time ago. To the point where anyone who currently watches the network doesn't really remember how big it actually was. It was considered one of Nickelodeon's best shows in the day, or at least one of its more popular ones, and so Nickelodeon did what Nickelodeon does, and they marketed as much as they possibly could, basically draining it of all likability and charm, while never fully understanding why people liked the show in the first place. Preschool Daze was only on the air for like a month, and as such, there exists only 4 episodes. So it doesn't really take a long time to watch through it all, but it certainly feels like a long time. Preschool Daze has been some of the most pain that I've had to endure during a Nick-O-Rama video, hence why I'm trying to get out of the way as early as possible. I mean, it's not the worst of the Nicktoons, it's just so incredibly boring, and like every single decision that went into the show is just wrong. So the show stars Susie and Angelica, and there's your first problem. Angelica is a character whose popularity that I've never understood. In fact, I understand her popularity so little that I have to assume that she was never actually popular. People don't talk about her fondly in this day and age, at least. She was just this insufferable snot-nosed brat that did nothing but delight in the tormenting of the characters around her. She didn't have any redeeming qualities at all. She was loud, obnoxious, and domineering. In the original Rugrats, though, this kinda worked because she was the antagonist. She had a place in the show, often being the catalyst. A typical Rugrats episode would have Angelica telling the characters a lie that would make their imaginations take over. Like making Chucky think that he was an alien because the way his belly button looked. She was a character that you love to hate. And you know the one thing that you absolutely do not do with a character like that? You don't make them the protagonist. While a protagonist doesn't need to be someone of upstanding morals, you have to want them to succeed in some way. And it is literally functionally impossible to ever want anything good to happen to Angelica ever. Like even in this show. One episode has her basically force another kid to climb to the top of the tree, or else she'll humiliate him. Susie is on the other end of the spectrum. While people might have liked Angelica in a previous life, Susie was never liked among the fans. If I remember correctly, her fan base was smaller than Dill's, which was impressive. She was a Mary Sue, plain and simple. She was a character who had no flaws at all except being super judgmental that no one else was on her absolutely perfect level. She didn't really contribute much to the show overall except making the parents look even worse, because somehow a 2-year-old girl was more on top of their children's lives than they were. So, what's the show actually about?
It's about nothing. Right.
Nothing! Absolutely nothing!
Okay, it's about 2 4-year-old kids going to a preschool and doing preschool things. No, this was not a Nick Jr. show, but you'd be forgiven for thinking that it was. To be fair, the show only got 4 episodes, so it couldn't really explore the potential of 2 characters no one liked doing absolutely nothing from the franchise that they came from. Well, maybe some of the new characters they introduced could have improved things. I mean, you've got Miss Weimer, their teacher, who is literally a stereotypical preschool teacher and nothing more. A bit of a hippie, constantly on the verge of a mental breakdown. Just the most typical first draft type of character that you can imagine. There are other adult characters like the creepy groundskeeper, but none of them have enough screen time to really make any reasonable impression. Except, like, the principal, I guess? Disclaimer, I don't know if she was actually the principal or a counselor or something like that, because this show makes it very, very hard for me to care about anything. She was the faculty member that Miss Weimer had a rivalry with. She thought that she can get, like, national recognition by having a play about the full life of George Washington, starring 4-year-old preschool children, because I guess she's delusional and that's her character trait. I guess that's a twist from the original show. In the original, we had characters who were insane because they couldn't see things that were there, plain as day. Now we have characters who are insane because they see things that simply aren't there. They also added a couple of characters from All Grown Up, Harold and Savannah. Harold contributes literally nothing. He's someone there for Angelica to hurt, so she'll eventually make the right choice and nothing more. And Savannah. So, like I said before, Angelica is now the protagonist, the character that you're supposed to want to see win. And a protagonist needs an antagonist. And that's where Savannah comes in. She is Angelica's Angelica. And you'd think that it'd be cathartic to see Angelica get a taste of her own medicine, but no. Savannah is just this vacuum of likability. and instead you're watching two miserable characters going at it over prizes that only appeal to preschoolers. Speaking of that, you know how you don't do a spin-off of the Rugrats? Not having the Rugrats. I don't remember much about Angelica's popularity, but you'd better believe that the original 4 Rugrats were some of the most popular characters in cartoons, until a certain yellow sponge came along. If you were born in the 90s, you probably had Rugrats merchandise, like that Tommy doll that would not shut up, ever. When we're talking about spin-offs that completely miss the point of the original, this is a good place to start. Honestly, the missing characters are only a part of the problem in that regard. The bigger issue is the missing imagination sequences. A big draw of the original Rugrats, what a lot of people watched it for, was seeing this warped version of the world. The babies had to use their imaginations to fill in a lot of the blanks of the world around them, and it was then that we got to see some really interesting visuals. At least until later in the show's run, when they resorted mostly to movie parodies. No, instead of showing the imaginations of the characters, this show is much more interested in showing other aspects of 4-year-old children, like making every character extremely loud and obnoxious. And of course, it takes great pains to highlight how gross kids can be. Somehow even more than the original, which may I remind you had characters that repeatedly ate bugs as one of their main character traits. One character here has snot dripping down their face constantly. Episode 2 starts up with characters eating chewed gum off of the playground. Yeah, you wouldn't think that this show would be gross with this particular art style. And I suppose we should talk about that too. I made it known that I'm not really fond of the traditional Klasky Csupo art style. It was a little bit too abstract for my tastes, but with the exception of the As Told by Ginger, their art style never really detracted from my overall enjoyment of the show. Even with something like Stressed Eric, the art style wasn't the problem. I mean, it was ugly, but it was stylistically ugly, if that makes sense. As for Preschool Daze, it's not stylistic, it's just ugly. I have no idea why you would do this. You tried to make Klasky Csupo draw in this super cutesy art style. Like, this show looks like something that you'd experience during a fever dream at 4 in the morning, because you fell asleep watching chibi anime. Every character just has these 1,000-yard, just glazed over stares. I'd keep going on about this, but I don't really know if there's much more point to continuing this review. Hey everyone, Angelica and Susie's Preschool Daze. The spin-off to a dying franchise that lasted only 4 episodes isn't good. Do you know that? Did you need me to tell you that? Like, this is a show that I said I was going to give a full review at some point, but it proved to be just too boring to even make fun of. The show isn't funny bad, it's just so incredibly pathetically blasé that you can't even really have fun mocking it. I felt my soul drain as I watched this one. It's not like the most infuriating of the Nicktoons, but I can't think of any other Nicktoon that has less of a reason to exist. Not just because it's a spin-off to a show that was past its prime, but because nothing in the actual show justifies its existence. It has characters with no on-screen charisma going through the most rote plots imaginable that doesn't even really have a premise beyond, remember Rugrats? I have no idea why anyone would make this, let alone watch it. And it looks like we're 0 for 2 in Rugrats spin-offs, which is sad for a show that originally dominated the 90s. However, people have been telling me that the 2021 Rugrats reboot has actually been pretty decent, so that does give me a little bit of hope. I'll be waiting for that one to be out for a little bit before getting it to, though, because you never know when a show starts good and then slowly gets bad. Like the original Rugrats. Besides, the next episode is going to be the one that I think you all want to see the most.
Next on Nickelodeon.
Making fiends, Vanessa's always making fiends, while Charlotte makes friends.
Hey, you've reached the end of the video. The names scrolling by right now are of all the wonderful patrons who donated to help keep this channel alive. If you'd like your name in the credits, head on over and make a donation yourself. Also, be sure to check out my Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok for exclusive content and previews of my upcoming videos. I've also got a forum where you can discuss anything that has to do with my content and connect with the rest of the community. To find anything that I mentioned, just visit my link tree in the description down below. Lastly, be sure to subscribe, comment, and share this video with your friends. Oh, and thanks for watching.